It has been a while, but we are now proud to present another game of Big Deck. Big Deck Vanguard, nonetheless. I randomly pick Serra as my Vanguard, whose ability didn't really help me out at all this game. Joe goes next with Mirri as his Vanguard, which is pretty amazing in Big Deck. Kyle pulled Karn, but shipped it back for good old Squee, who forces Joe and I to play with our hands revealed. These are our starting hands. I land Sting Flinger Spider and cast Elvish Mystic. Joe lands Cruel Ultimatum, although he already has every color mana anyway due to his Vanguard. Kyle lands Rubble Hulk. I explore, drawing a card, and then land Slaughter Pact, but then forget to play an additional land. Joe lands Phyrexian Rebirth. Kyle plays Nin the Paint Artist as a land. I land Dispeller's Capsule and cast Golgari's Signet. I then cast Liliana of the Veil, which Joe Arcane Denials. He and I both draw on his upkeep. Joe lands Restoration Angel. Kyle lands Yawgmoth's Bargain. I cast Lingering Souls, making 2 1/3 Flying Spirits. I then flash it back, which Joe cancels, not knowing that Kyle has Tooth and Nail and Bolus in hand. I then land Aurelia's Fury. Joe lands Gahiji, Honored 1. Kyle lands Magister Sphinx and casts a face-down creature. I attack Joe for 2 damage with my spirits. I land Bone Horde and cast Erratic Portal and Birds of Paradise. Joe lands Proteus Staff and casts Lightning Angel, not realizing he can attack with the Angel. At the end of Joe's turn, I target the face-down creature with Erratic Portal, bouncing it to Kyle's hand. Kyle reveals Sagu Mauler. Kyle lands Thraxamundar and casts Stranglehold. On my turn, I cast Necrotic Sliver and Looter Ilkor and then attack Kyle for 2 with Spirits. Joe lands Body Double and casts Krenko Mob Boss, which would be nicer if he remembered to attack with Lightning Angel this turn. Kyle casts Maelstrom Nexus and lands Nova Blast Worm. Maelstrom Nexus seems like a good enough card for my Necrotic Sliver to commit suicide over. I start my turn by attacking Kyle with Spirits and Joe with Looter. Ilkor, which Joe Lightning Helixes, gaining 3 life. Kyle takes 2 damage. What's extra nice about Unexpected Results is that it plays through Stranglehold. Nice. Unexpected Results reveals Razia, Boros, Archangel, and had I not already attacked this turn, maybe I would have cast it, but more Unexpected Results sounded more fun to me, so I landed Razia. With Joe tapped out, it seemed like a good time to Erratic Portal Krenko. I know how that guy gets when he gets cranking. Joe lands Timely Reinforcements and casts Karn Liberated, letting the carnage begin. Karn exiles Stranglehold with its -3 ability. Joe attacks Kyle with Lightning Angel. Not wanting to take damage anymore, Kyle casts Sunblast Angel, killing only my creatures. Kyle lands Binds of Vastwood. I cast Unexpected Results, finding a card that is not as good as Razia, which means I land it. I Chainer's Edict Kyle, who sacks his Angel. I then Erratic Portal Lightning Angel and attack Karn for 1 with Elvish Mystic. Joe lands Krenko and exiles a card out of my hand with Karn. I say goodbye to Fog. Joe casts Diabolic Revelation for 3, binding and putting Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, Kokosho the Evening Star, and Progenitus in hand. That's right, Progenitus, which he actually casts at one point in the game. On his turn, Kyle lands Dead Gone as his 8th mana, and if you remember Kyle's opening hand from the start of the game, you know that this is the turn he casts Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, which he uses to kill Karn, making it look so easy. On my turn, I draw Jace's Ingenuity, which would be a great card with a 2nd blue mana source. With not much else to do, I Unexpected Results and find Anawan the Ruin Sage, which I of course land. I land the Ingenuity and then recast Unexpected Results, next landing Bogart and Hellkite. Joe is wary about playing creatures due to Nicol Bolas. I make a deal with Joe that if Kyle attempts to gain control of the Lightning Angel, I will bounce it back to his hand with Erratic Portal. Joe then casts Lightning Angel and attacks Nicol Bolas for 3. Joe lands Adarkar Valkyrie. Kyle blows up Erratic Portal with Nicol Bolas, then lands Doomblade and casts Sagu Mauler. I make another deal with Joe that if he doesn't counter-squall my Unexpected Results, then I will use Chainer's Edict on Kyle instead of him. I flashback Chainer's Edict, targeting Kyle. In response, Kyle Grixis Charms Sagu Mauler, bouncing the thing back to his hand. I Unexpected Results for Slave of Bolas, which I land. I attack the real Bolas for 1, all by my elf. Joe lands Nature's Claim and casts Progenitus. See, I told you he'd cast it. Not that it's hard when you have Mirri as your Vanguard. Joe attacks Nicol Bolas for 3 with Lightning Angel. Kyle casts Tooth and Nail Entwined, searching for Eternal Witness, and Jink attacks his Core Augur, putting them both onto the battlefield. Kyle uses Nicol Bolas to gain control of Lightning Angel, and then attacks Joe with it for 3. At the end of his turn, Kyle draws 7 cards and discards down to 10. Must be nice to have Squee. With threats all around me and not much in my hand, I draw Faithless Looting. I then cast it, drawing into All Is Dust, comparable to a boss. I cast All Is Dust, completely clearing my enemy's boards. I then cast Unexpected Results, putting Disciple of Bolas onto the battlefield as a land, and once again return Unexpected Results to my hand. Joe casts Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, leaving Counter Squall mana up for Tooth and Nail, which Kyle returned to his hand with Eternal Witness. Kyle avoids casting non-creature spells, knowing Joe has Counter Squall. Instead, Kyle casts Enlisted Worm, cascading into Unburial Rites, but since he can flash it back, Joe doesn't bother countering it. Returning Eternal Witness to the battlefield, returning Nicol Bolas to hand. Kyle plays Edric as a land and plays a face-down creature. I cast Fierce Empath, searching a deck and finding Shieldred Whispering One. I don't cast it, wanting Joe to have a chance at killing Mr. Fathand next turn with Gisela. I Unexpected Results, hoping to get some more blue or green mana lands, which I am seriously lacking. I reveal land Gaddock Teeg. At the end of my turn, Kyle targets Gisela with Go for the Throat, but Joe countersqualls it, losing Kyle 2 life. Joe attacks Kyle with Gisela, dealing him 10 damage and killing him. He then casts Diabolic Tutor, finding and casting Temporal Mastery, taking an extra turn. Joe finally casts Primeval Titan from hand and searches a deck for whatever 2 lands, not really caring due to Mirri's effect. Joe casts Ratchet Bomb, and then attacks me Pretend with Gisela. Joe ratchets up his bomb. I cast Unexpected Results, finally finding a card I want with it, Treasured Find, returning All Is Dust to my hand, which I cast. I then flashback Faithless Looting, drawing 2 cards and discarding 2. Joe casts Ponder, and then casts Palaka Worm, gaining 7 life. I cast Careful Consideration, drawing 4 and ditching 2. I land Thought Reflection, sadly, and then cast Shieldred Whispering One and Tamiyo the Moon Sage, keeping Ratchet Bomb locked down. Joe sacks the worm with Shieldred trigger and draws a card. Joe casts Staffanin. On my upkeep, I return Necrotic Sliver to play. With both Genesis Wave and Death Grasp in hand, I feel in pretty good shape. I attack Joe for 6 with Shieldred. Tamiyo keeps Ratchet Bomb tapped. I blow up the Staff of Nin with my Sliver, and Joe shoots Tamiyo for 1 in response. On his turn, Joe casts Blightning, targeting me, making me wish I had cast at least one of the X spells in my hand the last turn. Sad times. I take 3 damage from the Blightning. Joe casts Solitary Gorillas. I return Necrotic Sliver on my upkeep. I shoot the Gorillas with Sliver, tap down the bomb with Tamiyo, and attack Joe for 6 with Shieldred. I cast Treasury Thrill. Joe casts Kasali Pride Mage. I once again return Necrotic Sliver and draw and cast Craterhoof Behemoth, giving my team +4. Tamio taps down the Pride Mage and I attack for 27. The Sliver doesn't have haste. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the game.
I will play this cool Moor.
Ugh.
Pass.
Akrama.
Maybe.
Sagamole.
You run Sagamale?